Our strategy in mobile and in all platforms is to engage the consumers wherever they may be. So whether it's feature phones, smartphones, and applications on those, or whether it's through the mobile web, what we've done is we've created a full portfolio of products. Each of the various use cases for consumers will vary depending upon where they are, what time of day, what day of the week. So our use case right now is we have the television, which is over 110 million folks. We have the weather.com on the web, which is approaching 70 million. And then the breakdown specific for mobile, it's fairly equal between iOS, iPhone devices, and Android devices. It's over 20 million for each of those. And then we have 33 million unique folks on the mobile web. So if you look at all of those together, it's north of 163 million users that touch our brand on a regular basis. Our business model in mobile is to generate the largest possible audience. And as I said before, our audience is growing rapidly, not just in the smartphone category, but also in tablets. So the first step is to make the most compelling and visually appealing, and we'd like to say we try and surprise and delight the consumers. So once we have those consumers engaged, we want to then build into the application advertising units. So in some cases it could just be subtle messaging, in some cases it could be contextually relevant advertising, and we monetize all of our mobile products through the premium advertising that we sell. From our vantage point, it's really exciting to try and experiment with all of the different ad units. So we want to try and raise the bar and offer things that are, again, based, particularly when you're looking at the advantages of mobile phones, where the device in many cases knows where you are. And almost in every case, people want the weather that's relevant to them. So the advantage we have is people will type in their zip code, or they'll do a geolocation search or a zip +4. So we know where everybody is. So starting with that premise, we can then tailor the advertisements to meet the needs of whatever that person is doing at that time and where they are physically. So weather conditions will certainly change seasonally. In some cases they can change from morning to night. So what we'll do as one example is, if we know where the person is, and as I said, in most cases we do, we can then tailor it tied into the specific weather conditions. So an example that we like to give is one of our partners like Dunkin' Donuts, where they may have a cold beverage where when it's warm, above a certain temperature, so maybe it gets north of 80 degrees, the ad unit itself would call out a culotta or a cool drink, so it's refreshing. On the other end of the spectrum, if it's cold, so maybe it's below 40 degrees, you want to feature a hot beverage. So the ad units themselves would look very different depending upon where they are and what the weather conditions are. And those tend to be incredibly effective because you can then go the next level down. Instead of just, hey, take a look at this cold drink that you can get at Dunkin' Donuts, you can then have a separate click and send that person to the nearest location, whether it's a retail location or a QSR location. When they've got the mobile phone with them, they can find that very quickly, and you can either map it out or they can find it, and then that transaction becomes, from initial exposure to the ad to the actual conversion and having someone buy the product is very quick. The topic right now is around standardization, and I think people are trying to understand what's the most effective way to create ad units that can be utilized across multiple platforms. I think that's important because I think one of the keys for us is that when an advertiser wants to reach the mobile consumer, it needs to be easy. And the challenge is that in many cases it's not a one phone call or a one meeting to do a mobile buy that's going to go across all of these devices. So what we've tried to do is make it incredibly easy for folks. So there is that baseline of ad unit standards. So there may be ad units that can work on an Android device, an iPhone device, an iPad, weather.com, etc. But if we didn't also tailor the advertisements for the unique device, we would be missing out on some really unique, rich media opportunities. So to give you an example of one of the things we did with Weston, as part of our new iPad application launch, Weston wanted to be a unique driver of the visual experience that we had. So when someone went into the current conditions page, we had a very nice, elegantly designed banner below the current conditions and the tombstones. And the conditions that were actually on the screen for the iPad would be brought into the copy of the ad. So if we were in New York and it was 35 degrees and snowing, the ad unit itself would say, hey, escape the snow and go to Florida or go to whichever location. So if you clicked on that banner and it would launch a full screen experience, that's something that we didn't do across all of the devices. This was really unique to the iPad. So when that full screen experience launched, it would show whatever that weather condition was. So in this particular example, it would be snow. So you would see snow covering the screen, and it would have a little note saying wipe away. So if someone gestured and wiped away the snow, it would reveal this beautiful sunny location in Palm Beach. And if you tapped on it, then you could go in and you could book your reservations and get away. If you don't take full advantage of the medium, you're not going to see the maximum revenue. I would say that there are probably three things in mobile that are really driving the dollars and driving the engagement with the consumers. The first, as we talked about, is really knowing where that consumer is. So if you don't tie the geo relevance, where that physical location is, to that ad, if the ad is not germane to that, you're not going to see the maximum value. You're not going to see someone, and just to be clear, it could be a matter of 0.5 miles versus 0.2 miles. It could be that subtle difference. If it's 0.2 miles, you may get a conversion. If it's a half a mile, maybe it's too far for them to walk. So ultimately, the location is pivotal. And in our case, what we're seeing as well is if something is relevant to the weather. So as an example, when we look at retail locations, you can have a very slight degree difference in temperature, maybe plus or minus 1 degrees, which will influence the purchasing habits for, let's say, if it's 1 degree cooler, people will now buy sweaters or they'll buy jackets. So if you tie in where those people are with the weather conditions at that particular time and say, hey, this is what's happening now, you tend to see a very high rate of conversion.